Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka nabiyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to the second episode in our series, a commentary on the last 10 surahs, or the last 10 chapters of the Qur'an. And after yesterday's introduction, inshallah ta'ala, today we'll begin with the first of the last 10, and that is Suratul Feel. And what I like to do whenever I do tafsir is begin with a few introductory or foundational information. I like to provide some foundational information about the surah. One of the foundational pieces of information I like to provide is the names of the surah. That in many cases, the surahs have a multitude or a number of names that by which they have been called or referred. And the names of this surah are two, Al-Feel and Alam Tara. And these two names, they come from the first, or the mention of these words in the first ayah, the first verse of the surah, and also from the incident that the surah alludes to. So in the beginning of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Alam tara kayfa, have you not witnessed how? And that's where the word Alam tara, or the title Alam tara, comes from. And he also goes on to say Ashab al-Feel, the companions of the elephant. And so al-Feel, which is the second common name by which the surah is referred, is also mentioned there. These names are apparently ijtihadi, which means that the scholars after the period of the companions, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim, routinely referred to this chapter using one or both of these two names, and gradually over time their use became widespread and readily accepted. So sometimes the names of the surahs of the Qur'an are what we call tawqifi, which means that they have come directly from Allah, or they've come from the Prophet ﷺ during the time of Tashri'ah, or they were referred to by that name by the companions of Muhammad ﷺ in his presence, and he approved of it. That makes the name of the surah, or the name of the surah, the name of the chapter, tawqifi, meaning it comes from Allah. It was meant to be as part of our religion, titled thusly. And sometimes the names are what we call ijtihadi, which means that, as we said, scholars after the period of the companions were in the habit of calling the surah by that name. It kind of caught on, and therefore after that period it became known by that name, or referred to by that name. The second introductory point, or foundational point, that I like to mention is whether the surah is Makkiyah or Madaniyah. And what we mean by that is that basically scholars of Ulum al-Tafsir and Ulum al-Qur'an have traditionally divided the chapters of the Qur'an in terms of the Zaman al-Nuzul, the time in which they were revealed, into two time periods. The first time period being the Meccan period, which means that the surah was revealed regardless of where the Prophet was when it was revealed, in terms of his physical, the physical space that he was occupying. Irrespective of that, if it was revealed before the Prophet made hijrah, they call that surah Makkiyah. And if the surah was revealed after the Prophet made hijrah, regardless of the space, the physical space that he occupied at the time of revelation, they call that surah Madaniyah. This particular surah, Suratul Feel, is Makkiyah. By agreement, unanimous agreement of the scholars, they all are agreed that it was revealed in the Meccan period before the Prophet made al-Hijrah. And this particular surah has a very famous but important backstory, and I'd like to mention that before we get to its tafsir. So the scholars have mentioned that a man by the name of Abraha al-Ashram was the viceroy of Abyssinia to al-Yemen. And this Abraha, because he was living in Yemen, which is part of the Arabian Peninsula, he observed how the Arabs actively made pilgrimage to Al-Kaaba Sharifa in Mecca. And every year they would have this annual pilgrimage. All these Arabs from all over the peninsula would come to Mecca. They would stay there for several days. They would worship, etc. And they would spend lots of money in the course of that. So he saw all of the revenue that the annual pilgrimage generated for the Meccans. And he also, in addition to that, he saw the prestige and the status that it earned them amongst the Arabs. And so he decided to build this grand church in Sana'a, in Yemen, and invite the Arabs to make pilgrimage to this church instead. A man from the tribe of Bani Kinana, when he heard about this, he became angry. And so he traveled to Yemen, and he entered the church that was built by Abraha under the cloak of darkness. He defecated in the church, and he took his excrement and smeared it on the walls of the church. Now, upon becoming aware of this, Abraha, of course, he was very angry, and he wanted to get his revenge, so he assembled a massive army of 60,000 soldiers with the intention of invading Mecca and demolishing the Kaaba in retaliation for what this Kinani, this man from Kinana, what he had done to his church. The army that Abraha assembled, we said 60,000 soldiers, that's a massive army, but in addition to that, he had assembled also a collection of elephants, several elephants, and the biggest one of them that was set to lead the charge was the one that Abraha set aside for himself, that he physically wanted to use this elephant and the other elephants to demolish the Kaaba. So when they marched on and when they reached Mecca, Abraha's men seized some property. As soon as they landed in Mecca, they seized some of the property and belongings, some of the livestock, etc., of some of the Meccans. And among the livestock and property that they seized were some camels which belonged to the Prophet's grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. Abraha instructed one of his men to inquire about the Meccan nobility and to summon the most honored and respected chief amongst the Meccans. So he basically told his messenger, he said, go, ask about their nobility, find the most noble, respected, high-ranking chief, and tell him that we have not come to fight, but merely to demolish this house of worship. We've come to exact retribution. We've come to retaliate for what was done to our church. And once we retaliate, we will leave. If nobody fights us or opposes us, we won't fight anyone. When Abraha's messenger came to Abdul Muttalib, the highest ranking chief of Quraysh, Abdul Muttalib, he said to the messenger, we have no intentions to fight, and we do not have the ability to mount a defense. This is a small city of commerce. We're not able to fight an army of 60,000 people, so you have nothing to worry about as far as that's concerned. We will not stand between him, Abraha, and what he has come to do. Verily, this is Allah's sacred house and the house of his dear friend Abraham. If Allah sees fit to prevent him from achieving his objective, it is his house and sanctuary. And if he allows him to demolish it, there is nothing that we can do to stop him. So Abdul Muttalib made it clear, we have no intention to resist. And Abdul Muttalib was then taken to Abraha himself, who was very impressed with the Prophet's grandfather. He honored and respected him and even offered to grant him whatever he requested. So Abdul Muttalib had audience with Abraha, and Abraha said, I'm really impressed with you, I like you, and you tell me what you want and I will do it for you. You make a request and I will grant it. So Abdul Muttalib requested that Abraha return the camels he had seized. Hey, you took some camels when you first arrived in Mecca. Those camels belong to me. I want you to give me my camels back. And this angered Abraha. I offered to grant you any request, and rather than beg me not to demolish your house of worship, you ask me for some camels, Abraha said. To which Abdul Muttalib replied. He said, I am the owner of these camels. I have to protect them. They're my property. I have to take care of them. And this house has a Lord, and he will surely protect it. This is the words of who? Abdul Muttalib, who was a mushrik. He was an idolater. But he said this house has a Lord, and he's going to protect it. And he didn't mean Allat wal Uzza. He didn't mean those idols around it. He meant Allah Jalla Jalaluhu wa Aduma Sultanu. So upon reclaiming his camels, Abdul Muttalib ordered the inhabitants of Mecca to leave the city. And once they had evacuated the city and went to the surrounding mountains and valleys to wait out whatever was going to happen and to see what was going to play out, Abraha ordered his army to what? To march forward toward the Kaaba with the elephants leading the charge and the biggest of them at the head of that charge. But when they got to a certain distance from Al-Kaaba Al-Sharifa, that main elephant, it knelt down. And Abraha, he tried to spur it. He shouted at it. He beat the elephant. But the elephant would not move forward. It would not advance toward Al-Kaaba. So ultimately, as Abraha, and the soldiers are standing there, trying to basically, as Abraha struggled with the elephant and couldn't get the elephant to move, unless he turned it away from the Kaaba. If he turned it to the north, toward Syria, it would move. Toward the south, toward Yemen, it would move. Toward the east, it would move. But if he turned it toward the west, toward Al-Kaaba, it would not move. So as Abraha struggled with that elephant to get it to move, and the soldiers looked on, waiting to see what was going to happen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent birds that pelted his army with stones. And the stones would strike each man on the top of his head and drill through his body until it exited from his backside. The entire army was killed in this way, mowed down and scattered about in a way that resembled vegetation eaten by grazing animals. So imagine if there was a field and animals were set loose, sheep or cows were set loose on that field, and they ate and they ate and they ate. What would that field look like after they had what? They had gone through it. That's how the men looked. Just body parts here and there scattered about like what? Like something had what? Had eaten away at them, but what it was in reality was birds with small stones that pelted them and killed them and annihilated them in this way. And it is this incident, brothers and sisters, that is referenced by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He says in the opening of the surah, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashab al-fil. Have you not seen, considered, or been told how your Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant? Remember, brothers and sisters, that this surah was revealed in the Meccan period when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam faced strong opposition from the pagan Arabs, and many of his followers were persecuted, and some of them were even killed for their beliefs. The pagans at that time wielded so much power, so much influence, that the situation at times may have seemed dire and hopeless for many of the believers, or to many of the believers, and even at times to the Messenger of Allah himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He revealed this chapter, the chapter of Al-Fil, to console the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the believers, and to remind them and the pagans, as if to say, Allah is almighty, His might is irresistible, His retribution is swift, and His ability to defend and avenge His messenger and the believers is indisputable. Have you not seen with your own eyes? And some of the people living at that time had actually witnessed the incident of Al-Fil. They witnessed it. Have you not seen with your own eyes? Or at least you've been told by people you trust what Allah did to the owners of the elephant. If He can do that to them, just annihilate 60,000 soldiers and elephants and horses and camels, if Allah can do that to that mighty army, what can He do to Quraysh, whose strength pales in comparison to that of Abraha and the army he brought from Yemen? The Quraysh didn't have 60,000 warriors. They didn't have elephants. They didn't have their equipment. They didn't have their military might, and Allah annihilated them. What can Allah do to Quraysh, the people who are persecuting you, O Muhammad, and the believers? So brothers and sisters, this surah, it serves as both a consolation to the Prophet ﷺ and the believers that the time will come when Allah will destroy their enemies, if those enemies do not repent and abandon their evil ways. And it also serves as a warning to the pagans of the punishment that they are inviting upon themselves if they continue to oppose the truth and harm the Prophet and the believers. Then Allah, He says, أَلَمْ نَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ أَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ فِي تَضْلِيلٍ. Did he not cause their plot to go awry? Meaning, he caused the outcome of their plot, their sinister plan, to be the opposite of what they intended. Instead of destroying the Kaaba as they intended to do, Allah destroyed them. They themselves were destroyed. Similarly, Allah is teaching us through this surah by reminding us of this incident that Allah can foil the plot of every faction of the disbelievers regardless of time and place. No matter how devious or well contrived their plan, and no matter how powerful they may appear, and how powerless the believers may seem. Sometimes we look at ourselves and we say, La hawla wa la quwwata lana. We have no power, we have no might, we have no military, what can we do? We're at their mercy, we're powerless, and they seem so powerful. Allah is telling us, regardless of how powerful they seem and how powerless you seem, Allah has the power to grant victory and give retribution to the believers, and to avenge and to defend the people who believe in Him. This is the message. Then he says, وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلَ, and sent against them birds, ababil. Birds, brothers and sisters, of an extraordinary kind. These were not ordinary birds. With beaks like those of birds, but legs like those of dogs, according to some of the Mufassirun, like Ibn Abbas. Other Mufassirun, like Ikrimah, they said their heads were like those of beasts of prey, like lions' heads, right? And they also differed, the exegetes, they differed about the interpretation of what does Allah mean when He says ababil? Tarmihim, arsal alayhim tayran ababil. Sent upon them birds ababil. Some of them said ababil means coming from every direction. Everywhere you look, you can't run. You see a bird coming behind you, so you go to the right. There's birds coming from the right, so you're running toward them. You turn to the left, birds from the left. You turn up front, they're in front of you. You turn back, they're behind you. Coming from all directions. Coming in waves. So one wave comes and kills a group and you think, okay, alhamdulillah, we're safe. Allah got them, but He spared us. And then another wave would come and kill that group. And another wave would come and kill another group. Also, some of them said ababil means kathir, an exceedingly large number. Imagine birds, so many of them, that the sky gets dark, like it's like clouds are moving in. But it's not clouds, it's just a flock so huge that it blocks out the sun. And some of them said various colors. They had different colors and shades. Ababil could mean any one of those things or all of those things. Allah goes on to say, Tarmihim bihijaratin min sijil, striking them with stones of hard clay. Stones, brothers and sisters, stones the size of pebbles or chickpeas. But these stones, these little bitty stones, they killed whoever they struck, striking a person in the head, drilling through his body, and exiting from his backside. Each stone is said to have bared the name of the person that it struck and subsequently killed. فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ, and made them like straw eaten up. What are the lessons, brothers and sisters? What are the takeaways that we can take away from this amazing surah, Suratul Feel? Number one, brothers and sisters, the pagans of Arabia, they believed in Allah and His Lordship. They believed that Allah is the creator, the sustainer, the doer of what He wills, the protector of His house, etc. They believed in rububiyatillah. But that was not enough to make them believers. Wasn't enough to make them Muslims. Because although they believed in Allah, they associated partners with Him in their worship. And this lets us know, brothers and sisters, it's not enough just to believe in Allah and that in His Lordship, He created us, He sustains us, He gives us life, He gives us death, and we think that that's Tawheed. We think that that is deen, that is being a believer. No, beyond that, we have to believe that He is the only deity worthy of worship, and this is really the heart of a Tawheed. This is really the crux of a Tawheed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَدْعُ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ لَا بُرْهَانَ لَهُ بِهِ فَإِنَّمَا حِسَابُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْكَافِرُونَ. And whosoever worships a deity besides Allah for which he has no authority, His recompense is with his Lord, and indeed the disbelievers will not be successful. Allah called the people who associate partners with him in their worship, even if they believe in his lordship, he called them kafirun, and he said they wouldn't be successful. Number 2 from the lessons, brothers and sisters, Allah defended his house, which at that time had become a shrine for paganism and idolatry. And in the course of that defending of his house, he defended the idolaters against the Christians, who are generally closer to the truth than the idolaters, than their idolatrous counterparts. So if you look at it, let me say that again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he defended his house, which at that time had become a shrine for paganism. In the course of doing so, he also defended the pagans against Christians who are generally better than their pagan counterparts. They're not perfect, but they're better than the pagans. Because why? They have a divinely revealed religion. We know this is true. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them a special status in the Qur'an. He didn't permit Muslims to marry mushrikeen, mushrikat. A Muslim man cannot marry a pagan woman, but he can marry a Christian woman, a Jewish woman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't permit the Muslims to eat the meat of the pagans, but permitted the eating of the meat of the Jews and Christians. Al-Muhim, this shows that they're what? They're better than them. Even though they're not perfect, they're not believers, they're better than them. But in this case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aided the idolaters over them. Why? Because at that moment in time, the idolaters were better than them. Why? Because what the Christians were trying to do. They were trying to destroy Allah's house, the house of Allah built by his Khalil, Ibrahim. So the pagans at that time were better than them, and Allah helped them against the Christians. There's a lesson in that for you and me, brothers and sisters. The lesson in that for the Muslims is that we have to be on our game. We have to believe in Allah and act like we believe in Allah. Because if we slip and we allow ourselves to be worse than the non-believers, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help them against us. He may give them victory and support them against us and cause them to prevail while making us fail, or allowing us to fail. ويدل ذلك and يؤكد ذلك. This is further confirmed and emphasized by a statement that Umar used to make when he would send the expeditions out to battle. He would say to his generals and to the soldiers in general, he would say to them, نحن لا نقاتل أعداءنا بعدد ولا عدة. He would say, oh my brothers, you're going to battle. But I don't want you to think that we fight our enemies with our numbers, a large number, because we're going to win, because we have all these soldiers. ولا عدة, equipment, armament, weaponry. That's not what we fight our. We take these things with us as a part of tawakkul, but we don't believe we're going to win because of our numbers, and we don't believe that we're going to win because of our weaponry. بل نقاتلهم بهذا الدين الذي في الصدور. Nay, we fight them with this religion which is in our hearts. فإن كنا نحن أفضل منهم. So if we are better than them, if we are more committed to our faith than they are to their faith, انتصرنا عليهم, we will be victorious over them. If we're the people of truth. If we hold fast to the truth, we are going to win. No question about it. وَإِن كَانُوا هُمْ أَفْضَلَ مِنَّا. But if they are better than us, more committed to their falsehood than we are to our truth, then they are going to be victorious over us. So we have to pay attention to this, brothers and sisters. We are failing not because our deen is wrong. We are failing because we are doing wrong. We're not following the deen the way the deen is supposed to be followed. Number 3 from the lessons and takeaways is this surah is a consolation for the messenger and for the believers in every time and space. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give us victory. He's going to protect us as long as we do our job and stay committed to the deen. Allah is going to protect us and defend us and exact retribution and avenge us against those who are harming us. Number 4 from the lessons, that the believer should never feel outnumbered, never feel defeated or powerless. If we are with Allah, Allah is with us, and if Allah is with us, who can be against us? Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil feel. Have you not seen how Allah dealt with the companions of the elephant? 60,000 soldiers well equipped, accompanied by several elephants, and they couldn't do anything. Allah handled them with birds with small pebbles. Have you not seen this? You're never defeated. You're never outnumbered. It's never hopeless. If you're with Allah, Allah will be with you. If Allah is with you, nobody can be against you. Number 5 from the lessons, a reminder and a warning to the disbelievers of the consequence of their disbelief and opposition to the truth. Number 6 from the lessons, Allah can use something small and apparently harmless, apparently innocuous, to exact retribution against his enemies and the enemies of his worshippers. And a good example we have from today, from our current context, is COVID-19. COVID-19, a virus that you can't see except with extremely powerful microscope, has decimated cities, has killed hundreds of thousands of people and infected millions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power, he can use something small, something we don't expect, something that we consider to be something that we can overcome. He can use that small thing and just wipe us out, annihilate us with that. That's Allah's power. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala wa arsala alayhim tayran ababil. He sent upon them birds. They were just birds, man. Birds with what? With pebbles, and wiped them out. And last but not least from the lessons, a display. The surah presents a display of the power of Allah and his limitless ability to do whatever he wills. One thing that we see from this display of power, it shows us that Allah's ability to do whatever he wills is limitless. It is unparalleled. And so what does that teach us? We should not hesitate to believe in the unbelievable. We have a lot of people nowadays who will tell us that there are things in the Qur'an that are problematic. And they're hard to believe in given what we know about science and technology. And they encourage us when we find those things, us in general and our youth specifically, when they come across those things in the Qur'an that are hard to believe, just don't believe in them. If you can't make sense of it and you think that science disproves it, just don't believe in it and say that's not what Allah meant. That's what they tell us. No. Part of being a believer is believing in the unbelievable, believing in things which go against human reasoning and seeming to go against the laws of nature. Why? Because Allah's power is not governed by the laws of nature. He can send birds with the heads of lions, carrying small pebbles, dropping those pebbles and annihilating people with those pebbles. It sounds unbelievable, but Allah can do anything, even what we cannot fathom and we consider to be unbelievable. And Allah tells us in the Qur'an, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, aminu. Oh, you who believe, believe. Meaning what? Believe in the unbelievable. Believe in whatever has come to you from Allah because it is truth. Also, the second thing that we see, or this surah is a display of, is Allah's limitless ability to exact retribution, to avenge, to take his revenge. And so therefore we as believers and just human beings who've been created by him, should fear him. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as he ought to be feared. We need to stop being the people who are lacking in our fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is showing us time and time again in the Qur'an that he is worthy of being feared. We shouldn't just fear Allah. We should also love Allah. We should also have hope of Allah's mercy. We have to combine all of these emotions, but we shouldn't be the people who lack or are void of the fear of Allah. Allah wants to be feared. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullah. Oh, you who believe, fear Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the prophets. وَكَانُوا يَدْعُونَنَا رَغَبًا وَرَهَبًا. They used to call upon us out of hope and out of fear. Allah praises them for fearing him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who listen to the talk and follow the best of it. May he make us from those who he teaches beneficial knowledge and who he benefits through that knowledge by making us from those who practice it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless your houses, to bless your spouses, to bless the remainder of your day. to bless your families, and to bless you and make you blessed wherever you may be. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبي محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.